a lot of reasons that a lot of abuse goes unreported, but that very basic idea feels like kind of the bedrock that a lot of it can grow upon.
Absolutely. And we talked about this before. Like, there is a triangular structure here that's always in place. And that's like one part is power, one part is money, and one part is sex.
Right.
And so there's definitely like a control over like money and sex, that position of power is kind of trying, like, fighting to keep.
Yeah.
In this, and that it's not just in the nuclear family itself, but when we look at politics and we see this pyramid in politics where the people in power are trying to control the sex, specifically women's bodies, and control the money that's going into these households, which leads to demonizing single mothers. Or
Right.
I have a case where one of my kids has no dad. And the reason for that is because I was still married. I got a res divorce, which is super cheap, but it takes several years to happen. So
interesting. Okay.
it took me 3 years. It took like 3 years of waiting for the court to get to my case to like rule it as a divorce, because it was through like the tribal court system.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So I was still married to my ex-husband when I had my son. And now, and I wouldn't put my ex-husband's name on there as my son's father because my ex-husband was not the father.
Right.
And so now I have one of my 6 children has no father at all on his birth certificate because they would not put my husband's name on the birth certificate as the dad. Because I was married to a different man.
Whoa. That's so weird. Like, why wouldn't they do it? Like, is it like a legal situation, or they were just like creeped out? Or
no, it's a legal situation. If you are married in the state of Montana, I don't know if this is the case in other states, but in the state of Montana, if you are still married to someone and you have a child by another person, you cannot put that other person's name on the birth certificate. It is legally, like, because you're married.
What? This is blowing my mind right now.
Yeah. The other thing is that because I wouldn't have even had any more children after my first marriage at all. But I went to go get my tubes tied. And because I was still married to my ex-husband, they would not tie my tubes. And
because your reproductive capacity belonged to him.
Exactly. And I refused for that to be the case. I was like, no, I'm not going to go to him and have him sign this paperwork so that I could get my tubes tied. I'm getting this done because I want it done. He doesn't have anything to do with this. He hasn't even been in my life for years. Oh my God. So I have 2 more kids now after.
I am enraged about that state of affairs because, like, so what we've been talking about so far is like the more or less the recent history of marriage in America, which is super rich territory. But it occurs to me that like the push toward the nuclear family and the suburbs and everything that we've been talking about, which, informs so much of our understanding today of marriage, was a result of like a lot of changes that had happened in the few decades before that, where women got the right to vote. Then, during the years after that, and especially during World War II, women went into the workforce, like in droves. And so when the dudes came back, the women were expected to just give up their jobs to their husbands because, that's the right thing to do. And that was met with some resistance. A lot of women were like, no, like we need something to do with our lives. And so it occurs to me that like the push toward nuclear marriage and making it your patriotic duty in the post-war years to get married and have children and vacuum the floor while your husband went off to work is very much a concerted effort to take some of the power that women had started to seize about their lives and like redirect it. Oh no, don't go to work and exercise your right to vote and have your own life. Vacuum the floors instead. Take a Benny. It'll be fine.
Okay. So 100% everything you just said. And again, I'm going to back you up.
Yes, I love this arrangement.
In Public Vows, a story of marriage and nation, Nancy Cott argues with respect to the US and the Christian model of lifelong monogamous marriage wasn't a dominant worldview in the 19th century. And like to expect like all these women to come out of post World War II era where they had been working and stuff and go into like this household where they were just going to have babies and clean the house all day was going to take a lot of work to make monogamous marriage seem like a foregone conclusion.
To make it seem desirable in the first place.
Right. And people had to choose to make marriage the foundation for the new nation, which is also why Catholicism is so important to like also this nuclear family system, because the Catholic Church actually helped create this system and keep it in place.
Yeah. I mean, the Catholic Church and marriage, that's like the whole backstory behind all of this and how we got to this point in the first place.
Right.
By treating women's bodies like objects.
Yeah. And trying to civilize indigenous people.
Mm-hmm. And it all comes back to means of control. Like, and I always end up, like, when I think about this stuff, looking like into the really far past and looking at like evolution and stuff to try to grasp like the very basic ideas behind these truths that we now live with as if they are objective truth, but usually are not. like the fact that, women are supposed to be subservient to men, and that therefore that's why there were all these religious rules and then secular laws made up on the idea that women literally were owned by men. Like up until, I don't know, like probably around 1920 in America, women could not own property individually. They could not vote. They were not supposed to work out of the house. I mean, many did, but like it wasn't a thing that you did, to get your own job and have your own career. And basically, like, ownership of your life was transferred from your parents to your husband. You were at no point supposed to have power.
Signified by the passing of your father to your husband in the wedding ceremony itself.
Exactly. Oh, and that's something else that I wanted to mention real quickly. The what do you call it? The putting the wedding itself, like the wedding ceremony being put on this pedestal as like the ultimate moment, in a woman's life. I was reading not so long ago about how, like, up until the wedding of Queen Victoria, to Prince Albert, they're really like weddings were not that big of a deal. Like for rich people, they were always a pretty big deal because you got all your rich friends to come and you put on some nice clothes and you had like a meal or whatever. But that was the first like hugely publicized massive wedding in like more or less modern times. And a lot of the things that we do in weddings now in America were popularized by Queen Victoria. She wore a white dress. That didn't used to be a thing. She carried flowers. That didn't used to be a thing. Like a whole bunch of the ways that like things that happened at the reception, things that happened during the ceremony, the way that you are supposed to have a wedding, quote unquote, now is very much based on that particular moment in time. And then, Queen Victoria and King Albert went on to change the way that Europeans lived, which then came over to America and is now assumed to be normal. And I think that really like that wedding did a lot to actually elevate the idea of the wedding as this perfect romantic moment, as opposed to like, the way that you transfer power over this woman's reproductive capabilities from one man to another, and maybe some money in there as well.
Absolutely. Like Queen Victoria is the reason it's popular here. And it was like throughout the entire world, like mostly like rich cultures, like rich like families that were having like these big weddings. I was just reading about like weddings in China not too long ago, like older weddings and how like big of a deal that was there. Like it was definitely like popular for like the upper class families and stuff to
Yeah.
have that connection. But also they have matchmakers there. So
Hmm.
like who would like match you. And so like a lot of like some of the cultures where the wedding was a huge deal, they did have like weddings that were like between two people who were chosen to be married, like not because
Right.
of love again, but
Hmm.
because of relationship, like relationships to or expectations to their families and to the places where that they were from.
Yeah, family
And so
alliances.
again, in this case, like even though it was popularized between like Queen Victoria and Edward, that was, even though it was like this big huge thing, and now it's a big huge thing that we totally bought into, and I'm going to talk about that in a sec. But that even that was a like legally binding
Mhm.
agreement between them to like make this marriage happen as
Yeah.
a way to as a like way to fulfill the requirements as like royals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I guess like a lot of the sort of the expectations that are put on marriage as a legal institution as opposed to a romantic institution really can be like you can look at royal families and
Yeah.
that's it's kind of just like everything you need to know is right there. This is
Yeah.
they are not love matches.
Yeah,
They are
the reason why they're a big deal is because you're not just uniting two people, but you're oftentimes uniting two different like territories together
mhm.
as one, and the territories are coming together to like um accept this like legally binding like new
Yeah.
thing that's these are the people that are going to be like your rulers.
You're consolidating money and power with sex. There's the
Yep,
triangle again.
exactly. Yes, there it is again. I did a little bit of research though. We bought into this as Americans big time. And of course, we monetized it as we tend to do. And so today, the wedding services industry is a $55.1 billion industry
Whoa, like a year?
this year. And that's with it taking a big cut because of
Wow.
COVID-19.
Wait, in
There
2020 it made over 55 billion dollars.
$55.1 billion.
Oh my god. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. So this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they are also doing everything. They're spending as much of that $55.1 billion as they can to continue this idea that you need a diamond ring, you need a white dress, you need flowers, you need a caterer, you
Hmm.
need and and profiting like off of it, off of this
Yeah.
like legal
Oh
by
my god.
this legal agreement.
And it's totally like the entire wedding planning process for heterosexual marriages has it's like sort of you can like condense the entire fucked upness of the power dynamic in marriage by looking at the wedding planning situation because
Mm-hmm.
almost universally the woman in a heterosexual marriage is expected to do all of the work to put the wedding together. And
Right.
it has been sold as part of the fun. Oh, it's so fun to figure out who's going to
Right.
sit next to whom at what table. Oh, it's so fun. Look, you can go get your pedicure done while you're leafing through, bridal magazines. And isn't that fun? But like, we put this like glamorous facade on the fact that the woman is, again, doing all of the grunt work. like, and it's incredibly stressful if you have ever known
Oh
anyone
yeah,
who has planned
totally.
a wedding. Like,
I planned a wedding. I had an Alfred Angelo dress. I had everything. I had the cake. I had okay, so I told you in 2020 it was a $55.1 billion industry, but that was with it taking a hit. In 2019, it was a $72 billion industry, with the
wow.
average wedding costing $32,000. Think about like how old a lot of these people are when they're getting married,
Yeah.
and the fact that you're basically taking the down payment for a house and putting it into this one day.
Yeah. You know what's weird to think about too? Like I assume that with people who are way richer